being here, guys. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Let's get started. So, how do we solve the world's biggest challenges? Water scarcity, hunger, climate change. These are real problems and they're here now, demanding urgent action. And we need bold, transformative solutions that redefine the way we do things and how we protect our planet. The future depends on our ability to innovate today.
Absolutely. So with that being said, what is our point of focus for the day? That is going to be revolutionizing food production with lab-grown meat, balancing profitability with ethical, financial, and legal responsibility, while positioning Arizona as a leader in sustainable innovation. So why is this important? Obviously, we have a guiding point of focus. So what does this mean in the grand scheme of things? Our work will impact three main categories. The first being ethics. This is going to be your animal welfare, land, water, and climate crises. In terms of financial, we're going to discuss why this project is viable within a $1.7 trillion industry. And lastly, legal. How you, as the Arizona Governor's Advisory Board, can help us in protecting the technology to become global leaders. So now I want to talk about our stakeholders. And again, there's three main categories in this. The first being us, Arizona and Sage Labs. Like I mentioned, we have the unique opportunity to take advantage of this market growth and become global leaders in innovation and sustainability. The second is consumers. These are our people who eat meat, vegetarians and vegans who are looking to take lab-grown meat into their diet. And lastly, the world. The hunger crisis is here, it's real, and it's growing, especially in developing countries. And lab-grown meat offers the unique ability to help combat this without the environmental strain. And it is also more environmentally friendly than regular meat you buy at the grocery store. So with that being said, I'm Sophia Salami.
And I'm Aradia Garner.
And we are the leadership team at Sage Labs. That was a brief introduction. Next, we'll be talking about the ethical, financial, and legal implications tied with this case. Then we'll give our pitch before we conclude.
So let's get right into it. And the first thing we want to talk about is animal cruelty. Over 1.1 trillion animals are slaughtered every year, and so many more are bred and kept in cruel conditions only to be slaughtered months or years later. This is so much more than we ever imagined before starting our work at Sage. Then there's the environment. Lab-based meat requires just 1% of the land and 4% of the water that of conventional meat. And leading studies show that the environmental impact will be astronomical, as carbon dioxide emissions will come down 96%. And since there's no thermic fermentation, methane emissions will actually come down 100%. So what does that mean globally? Firstly, we're freeing up 9.15 billion acres of land. And to put that into perspective, there's only about 24 billion acres of habitable land in the world, and we use around 40% for meat agriculture. We also use 1 quadrillion gallons of fresh water annually, and about 29% of that goes to meat agriculture. We'd be freeing up 275 trillion gallons of fresh water annually. Greenhouse gas emissions would come down 15%, and methane emissions, which are actually 22 times more common than carbon dioxide, would come down 44%.
Another major concern I want to talk about is food waste. When we're consuming animal products, most of the time we're not consuming the entirety of the animal, which leads to massive waste. Like, for example, for the chicken, we only eat the breast, the thigh, the wing, etc., and the rest is thrown away. This helps contribute to 77.4 million tons of waste from the 6 major meat-producing species. Lab-grown meat offers us a unique opportunity to be able to grow the part of the animal that we actually need, mitigating any waste and being way more sustainable. In terms of health, we looked at a variety of science studies as well as comparative analyses with academic papers, and we found that lab-grown meat on average is 7 times healthier than conventional meat and 4 times healthier than organic meat in the 4 major diseases caused.
Now let's talk about financial sustainability. So we conducted a survey, and the first part focused on finding out whether or not vegetarians and vegans and current meat eaters would consider lab-based meat as a part of their diet. We found that over 50% of vegetarians and vegans would consider it, but even more surprisingly, found that 36% of meat eaters would consider it. And so that's important because we're looking at a $1.4 trillion global industry, and around 23% of the world is either vegetarian or vegan. Taking conservative numbers and with some simple math, we find that we're looking at a $600 billion industry based off conservative market demand today. Think about that 10 years down the line, we're easily looking at $1 trillion industry.
Now I want to get into the legal implications tied to this case. So there's a couple pieces to this. The first is intellectual property. The technology associated with lab-grown meat is a huge scientific advancement. So safeguarding this intellectual property is major, and it will allow companies as well as researchers to innovate freely without the fear of intellectual theft. The second piece of this is regulatory support. With the help of the board, if we can get this technology to be safeguarded through intellectual property, because lab-grown meat falls under both the FDA and USDA, we'll be able to take this to the federal level, impacting big government. It'll also allow for local companies and local businesses to be able to commercialize while still prioritizing public health and safety. So why is Arizona the perfect place for this? Well, a couple reasons. The first is Arizona has the opportunity to position itself as a hub for biotech and sustainable agriculture. This can lead to economic growth in bringing talent to the region, as well as job creation and overall just growing the market as a whole. And the University of Arizona has already done initial research in this field, which is huge. The second part of this is environmental sustainability. Again, if this technology is protected, Arizona stays at the forefront of climate resilient industries.
Okay, so now there's one other reason why Arizona is the perfect place for this. Arizona has positioned itself as a global leader in renewable energy. Backed by hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure investments and progressive policies, Arizona has set the standard for what a sustainable environment looks like. And now we're looking at a similar situation with lab-based meat, and Arizona has again the opportunity to lead the world in sustainability and set a global standard with lab-based meat. So yes, the CapEx and OpEx are high, but the potential is there. And now talking about our specific pitch. So there's one other reason why we believe in adoption. So we asked, in our second part of our survey, we asked people what type of meat they buy. And over half of meat eaters say that they would buy organic meat. Great, so then we asked them why, and the biggest reason was health concerns. So we find that people are willing to pay more for a healthier product. Great. We finally asked people that wouldn't consider lab-based meat why they wouldn't consider it, and the second biggest reason was health concerns. So we know that lab-based meat is actually healthier. We also know that people are willing to pay more for such a product. This leads us to believe that if we end this education gap, we're good. So now let's talk about our plan itself. In the first year, we want to focus on securing regulatory support, working with Arizona and the federal government to really make sure that we protect our right to make this meat. Second is pilot programs. We want to work with stores like Whole Foods and Erewhon where consumers are willing to pay more for a healthier product and gain feedback from them and prove to them that our meat is in fact better. Secondly, in the coming decade, we want to focus on really expanding our market share, getting down as many bioreactors as possible, and driving down our costs. The third part of our step is something that we want to be doing throughout, and that's job training. So there's going to be an initial skill gap with this new industry, with conventional meat agriculture, and we want to make sure that we're being sustainable in everything we do, and so we want to make sure that we're filling that gap. Public education is arguably the most important piece, and we want to make sure that we're able to convince as many audiences that our meat is better. And so that includes the pilot program, but also working with schools and corporate to sponsor luncheons and targeted marketing. And lastly, we have R&D. We want to make this process even more sustainable and work on some immortalized cell lines that eliminates the need for animals altogether. And lastly, big picture, we want to hit 40% global market share by 2044. We want to wipe out 50% land, water, and emissions use, and meet our goal of hitting 2%, donating 2% of all meat produced to the global hunger crisis.
So let's get back to our stakeholders. We gave these three categories at the beginning of our presentation, and throughout we've told you how we can create value for each of them. So to reiterate, Arizona and Sage Labs will have the opportunity to become catalysts in the world. Consumers will have another better option for food that's healthier and more sustainable. In the world, we are impacting the hunger crisis and the environment on a daily basis. So can we implement this technology in other industries? The short answer is yes, the pharmaceutical industry. We can take this technology and implement it into bioengineered organs and tissues for drug testing. And lastly, everyone wants to be remembered. Everyone wants to be someone that changes the world. everyone wants to end up in the history books. Today's presentation for sure is about our company, Sage Labs, and our lab-grown meat. It's for sure about the numbers and the profit, but more than anything, it's about animal welfare, the environment, and how we in the Arizona government can be known as catalysts for changing the world.
Thank you.
One question.
Should lab-grown meat be developed and scaled up if the long-term consequences on public health and the environment remain uncertain?
So I think that our presentation was all about proving that the consequences on people and the environment are real and they're here. We talked about a lot of different numbers, and I'm not going to say them again because I don't think anyone wants to hear that, but the changes are real. Now, if we really had to ask whether or not this impact will come, let's talk about what we did with solar and PV. We didn't know, right? We don't know until we do it, until we try it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, we try it in a different way, but the changes are real in our opinion. They're here, and if it doesn't work out, then we need to approach it a different way, but that's no reason to hide from this because it is a powerful solution. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, without further ado, we're going to keep it moving right along. Okay, that was our team from Boston College. Up next, our hometown heroes representing Pima Community College.
Hello everyone, I hope everybody's having a good day so far. My name is Caden Bradley and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Next Gen Pima Foods.
My name is Ethan Tees, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Next Gen Pima Foods. We'd like to thank the representatives from the government's office and the panel for being here today.
We're very excited to present to you today a topic that could very well change and shape the future of Arizona's beef industry as we know it.
This topic is lab-grown meat, or as we like to call it, cultured meat. We'll discuss the technology behind cultured meat, as well as the doors it can open for economic growth, sustainability, and leadership in Arizona. Let's dive in.
Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a quick audience survey. So go ahead and raise your hand for me if you are open to the idea of cultured meat in Arizona. Looks like a lot of people here today, so I think we might have some type of bias. Now go ahead and keep those hands raised because I do have a follow-up question. Keep your hand raised if you would further be willing to try cultured meat. It looks like we've got a few less hands. Now, let's compare that to national sentiment. According to the Associated Press, 56% of U.S. consumers unfortunately feel that cultured meat just sounds weird. Now, hopefully over the course of this presentation here today, less than 56% of you will feel the same. Furthermore, 31% of U.S. consumers say that they will try cultured meat. And of those 31%, 7% would go as far as to replace farm meat with a cultured alternative. And 10% don't eat meat at all. Now, the importance of these numbers should become increasingly more clear over the course of this presentation. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some of the challenges that the beef industry is currently facing. We're talking about a rising demand for beef, a shortage of workers, a scarcity of natural resources, and the drastic effects of climate change.
We interviewed two key stakeholders that provide unique insights to both the cultured meat and the traditional meat industry. Dr. Stephen Menke proposed that we should create a council of research and innovation to further grow and develop the cultured meat industry. Our next person that we interviewed is Dr. Carla Lombana. She is a veterinarian who's worked in the traditional beef industry for many years. She said that cultured meat can offer solutions for the problems that the traditional beef industry is facing.
We want to give a huge thank you to both of the people that were involved in the interviews for our proposals here today. Now, I'd like to introduce our company, Next Gen Pima Foods. We're a local company dedicated to the innovation of cultured beef in a way that complements the traditional beef industry. We do not want to replace traditional beef, but we want to provide a complement and an alternative in times of need.
Our mission at Next Gen Pima Foods is straightforward. We want to bring cultured beef to the forefront, offering a premier alternative beef source to Arizona that maintains the essence and nutrition of beef while promoting sustainability.
Our goal is to provide and support existing jobs, innovate an industry, and allow Arizona to be seen as a leader in this new economic model. Furthermore, we've addressed some of the challenges that the beef industry is currently facing. We believe that with the implementation of cultured beef, we can alleviate these industry challenges. Next Gen wants to address these challenges head on to fix these problems.
The key stakeholders we look to support here are farmers, ranchers, regulatory agencies, animal rights organizations, academic institutions, all indigenous communities throughout Arizona, the traditional beef industry, and the food industry as a whole.
We believe in building a collaborative ecosystem. We want to create a council for research and innovation that includes all of those key stakeholders that my CEO just outlined for you. We want everybody from regulatory experts to renewable energy experts to traditional beef industry workers. We want to make sure that everybody has a say in this growing industry and that everyone has a place in this, so that everyone can thrive in this new economic model.
We look to support the traditional beef industry by offering training programs for Arizona's ranchers and farmers who wish to transition into the industry. We'd also provide specialized training within each different sectors of our facilities, such as the cell sample collection, bioreactor operation, packaging and labeling of products, as well as the distribution of our products.
Next Gen supports both local communities and indigenous farmers in this process. For local communities, we plan to build and invest in rural infrastructure to allow for jobs to be implemented across the entirety of our state. For indigenous farmers, we understand that they make up 57% of all of Arizona's producers. We want to focus our collaborative efforts in a way that respects their cultural heritage and agricultural practices, because we believe that if we can implement our technology with their sustainable land practices, that we can create high-quality ingredients for Next Gen.
The positive impacts that we can add to our consumers include the further enhancement of nutritional profiles within cultured beef. We can customize these nutritional profiles by removing unhealthy elements from traditional beef, such as saturated fats and heavy metals such as lead or mercury.
For the environment, we understand that the traditional beef industry contributes significantly to greenhouse gases, emissions, land degradation, and water use. And we can cut down on these environmental impacts to maintain and preserve the beautiful ecosystems here in Arizona. Now, let's talk about economic growth. Our plants and facilities will create high-quality jobs in areas such as biotechnology, food safety, and all areas of the supply chain. This will in turn diversify the job opportunities that are currently presented in the traditional beef industry. We believe that these efforts will diversify the job opportunities to allow for economic growth while supporting all of our key stakeholders. Now, to bolster those claims, let's look at the compound annual growth rate of the cultured meat industry. This industry is expected to grow at a rate of 23.2% annually over the next decade. This growth rate shows that there is room for the industry and that everyone can thrive, and that this is a viable solution for all of our stakeholders. Furthermore, you may be asking yourselves, how much will this cost the state of Arizona? While we understand that the initial investments may seem substantial, it is important to recognize the long-term benefits financially for the state of Arizona. We've outlined our proposals and our estimates for the costs that this will incur. We've estimated initial investment and operation costs, research and development costs, as well as marketing and branding to raise consumer awareness and educate the public on the safety, health, and taste of cultured beef, as well as the renewable energy costs so we can reduce emissions and save our Arizona environments.
The FDA is one of two regulatory agencies responsible for reviewing and approving cultured beef facilities. The FDA is responsible for creating a written food and safety plan for these facilities that outlines the potential hazards, preventative measures for those hazards, a recall plan, as well as an up-to-date set of records for each facility's production methods. The USDA is the second regulatory agency, and they're responsible for the processing, packaging, and labeling of all cultured meat products. The FDA is responsible for the early stages of cultured meat production, such as cell sample collection, and they transfer their oversight and jurisdiction to the USDA once a company begins their cell harvesting process. Now, under House Bill 2244, it states that a person labeling any food products must clearly label them as the products that they're labeling and not misrepresent or misbrand the products. This also directly applies to the cultured meat industry, where all cultured meat products must be clearly labeled as a cultured food product. Now, why is Arizona uniquely positioned to lead in the lab-grown meat revolution? Well, Arizona provides a vast amount of open land, they have a history of agricultural innovation, and they have a strong connection to the cattle industry. One of the 5 C's that boost Arizona's economy is indeed cattle. Utilitarianism is a key ethical theory that complements corporate social responsibility. Utilitarianism states that a person is morally obligated to promote an outcome that produces the most happiness and well-being to the people that they're serving. At Next Gen Pima Foods, we want to serve all of our stakeholders, expand the agriculture industry, as well as promote economic flourishment within the state.
Today, Ethan and I outlined our company's proposal for the integration of cultured meat into the traditional meat industry. We believe that this implementation will alleviate industry challenges such as rising demand for beef, a shortage of workers, a scarcity of resources, and the drastic effects of climate change. We create a product that is not only viable, but sustainable, healthy, and safer than what's currently offered by the traditional beef industry. We believe that by working with our stakeholders, by working with the traditional beef industry, by allowing for government oversight, we can position Arizona as a leader in this new economic model. Thank you all very much for your time today. Remember, respect our time.
All right, thank you, Pima Community College. Time for your one question.
Should lab-grown meat be developed and scaled up if the long-term consequences on public health and the environment remain uncertain?
Yeah, so for Next Gen, we believe that through our Council of Innovation and Research, we can allow for the scaling of cultured beef in a way that guarantees the safety, health, and benefits of cultured meat in the state of Arizona. We also understand that there are multiple other benefits, such as environmental and stakeholder considerations, as well as the economy of Arizona, which can flourish under this new economic model. So there's more to consider than just what is skeptical right now. But we understand that our council can address these issues and further collaborate to ensure a future for all.
Without further ado, time to move on to our next team. So please welcome the team from the University of Alberta.
What if you could enjoy a juicy steak, but always created in a way that can make the world a better place? Imagine a future where we could meet our food needs while still supporting farmers, protecting our environment, and ensuring animal welfare. Well, this future is here, currently with lab-grown meat. Hi, my name is Ibira, and this is my partner, Harjo. And today we're going to talk about the implications of lab-grown meat here in Arizona.
Perfect. Let's take a look at today's executive summary. The ethical principle that we'll be following is the principle of least harm, where we actively choose actions which bring about the least amount of harm to all parties involved. As the FDA has approved lab-grown meat safe for human consumption, we will further support the production and sale of lab-grown meat after looking at the ethical considerations of consumer health, and animal welfare, environmental impacts on farmers, and some ethical considerations. Ultimately, we will be concluding today that lab-grown meat brings upon the least amount of harm compared to traditional meats, and therefore it should be given an opportunity on the free market.
Lab-grown meat gives us a faster, cleaner way to meet our demands for meat. It takes 2 years to raise a cow for food, 9 months for pigs, 2 months for chickens. But we can get from sows to a juicy steak in just 2 weeks with less resources. This means that we can meet our food demand in less time and a fraction of what it takes to grow meat in traditional methods. As well, we have a cleaner, faster process that gets us to the same end result, real meat. We take stem cells from live animals without slaughtering them. We put them in a bioreactor in a nutrient-rich bath, where we eventually get muscle and cell tissue, which we shape into meat products. Again, it takes a fraction of the time, and we get real meat in an ethical and sustainable way.
Looking at 4 of the main and key stakeholders here, we've identified that consumers, the people who buy these products, and traditional farmers to be the most important key stakeholders here, as they have the most power and interest in the lab-grown meat business. Consumers are important here because the decisions we make about the lab-grown meat business will directly impact their health, and farmers are important here because the lab-grown meat business affects their livelihood and incomes directly as well. So coming back to the least harm principle here, this is the principle where we choose actions that bring about the least amount of harm into the world. And this is the most practical framework for a business setting, because in any business, there will be some degree of harm that we put into the world. It's unreasonable to ask to do absolutely zero harm to the world. But what we can do is look for new ways of doing business where we reduce our negative impacts on the world. And with this, we can create shared value where we can still pursue our economic and daily interests, but also reduce our negative impacts on others involved. Let's see how we can do this with the protein in our diets. So currently with traditional meat, we can see traditional meat is prone to diseases such as the avian and swine flu, and also sometimes has use of antibiotics, which can negatively affect consumers by introducing antibiotic-resistant infections. Also, approximately 50 million Americans suffer from foodborne illnesses every single year, which also causes approximately 3,000 unfortunate deaths. So we're forced to ask ourselves, is this the best that America can do? Let's take a look at lab-grown meat. We'll be taking a look at 4 major points here. The first one being the approval from the FDA, meaning lab-grown meat has gone through rigorous testing processes to ensure that it is safe for human consumption. And therefore, there are also no cancerous links between lab-grown meat and cancer, And the FDA would not be approving such a product if there were cancerous links. Numerous studies have also confirmed that this myth has been debunked. And looking at the controlled environment in which lab-grown meat is produced, there is much less opportunity for lab-grown meat to meet harmful contaminants and pathogens, such as slaughterhouses with traditional meat. But however, it's not possible to say that lab-grown meat, just as any other product, is 100% contamination-free. That's why we emphasize the need to prioritize hazard analysis and critical control points during this food production process to ensure lab-grown meat companies are producing the most clean product possible. And with that being said, we can easily see that lab-grown meat produces the least amount of harm compared to traditional meats, which are more prone to disease and other contaminants, making it the most ethical way forward.
70 billion animals are slaughtered for food every year, and they're living in some deplorable conditions. For generations, we've come to accept that meat slaughter is a necessity for meat. But lab-grown meat provides a path forward, a solution where animals don't have to suffer for us to get the meat that we want. It's important to remember that animals are sentient beings. They feel fear, pain, and stress, just like we do. Yet millions of them are forced to live in overcrowded, unnatural environments where they meet a violent death. Lab-grown meat gives us the choice to choose kindness over cruelty while still meeting our demand for meat.
It is clear that over traditional lab meat production, lab-grown meat provides the least amount of harm to animals and is the most ethical and sustainable way to meet our growing meat demand.
And next, we'll be taking a look at the environment and lab-grown meat. First off, looking at the water usage, lab-grown meat has the potential to use up to 96% less water compared to traditional meats, which is a huge win for the environment. Same thing goes for deforestation, where at the maximum, lab-grown meat has the opportunity to use up to 99% less land compared to traditional meats. As for emissions here, cattle are a major cause of the methane emission, and in a future where we would need to breed much less cattle for slaughter, methane emissions will be seen coming down significantly. Looking at energy though, currently lab-grown meat uses a lot of energy for production, but that is the state currently, and lab-grown meat is not available for large-scale production or scale today. The technologies can and will improve if we give them the opportunity to. And with that, we can easily see that for the environment, again, lab-grown meat has much less harm compared to traditional meat. And let's take a look at how we can mitigate some of the energy usage as well.
Our organization proposes a partnership with Arizona renewable energy sector. We believe that this will help make the lab-grown meat process more sustainable. Currently, 17% of Arizona's electricity comes from renewable sources, and there are solar panels all over the state. By leveraging renewable energy, we can not only reduce the carbon footprint of the lab-grown meat process, but we can also create high-skilled jobs in agri-tech and renewable energy sectors. Some Agritech is an example of how this can work in the real life. They're a lab-grown meat company based in Malaysia that uses solely solar energy to power their bioreactors, and we believe that we can do that here in sunny Arizona.
So of course, one of the major concerns is the impact of lab-grown meat on traditional farmers. Traditional farmers are concerned for their livelihoods and incomes in the future. However, we'd like to note that there is an excellent opportunity for farmers to collaborate with lab-grown meat companies in the initial stages of this cell extraction, where farmers can provide the animals and the cell extraction, and the lab-grown meats can also pay for this process. This is an excellent opportunity for farmers to generate new revenue streams which have never existed before, and also stay active within this evolving food industry. With all the benefits with the environment, consumer health, and animal welfare that we've highlighted today, we can see that the benefits are clearly outweighing the competitive advantage, the competitive atmosphere that the traditional farming industry will be facing. With that being said, it's important to remember that competition and innovation are normal parts of any business. America cannot shy away from innovation just because there's a bit of competition. We understand that there's new challenges here that we've never tackled before, but we will be able to if we give it the opportunity.
Now we can look at the economic considerations. Lab-grown meat does have a market, and if we can see it by 2040, 35% of the lab-grown meat market will be made of lab-grown meat. As well, as technology and information persists, by 2030, we can see the price of lab-grown meat dropping so that it can be accessible to the average consumer. As well, it helps create jobs, once again, we said before. Looking at legal considerations, the USDA and FDA have jointly approved the sale and consumption of lab-grown meat. However, there are certain states like Florida and Alabama that have banned lab-grown meat entirely, and in Arizona we see similar situations with our House bills. We do not support these efforts whatsoever. We believe that they don't only stifle innovation, but they also reduce the choice for consumers.
With conscious purchasing on the rise, we have to ask ourselves, why should Arizona's government prohibit consumer choice in the free market? We have an ethical responsibility to protect American liberty. Why should these consumer rights be infringed because of involvement within the free market? And with lab-grown meat being banned or constrained, Arizona's government would actually be putting more harm out into the world because you'd have to be ignoring all of the environmental benefits and the consumer health benefits and the animal welfare benefits that lab-grown meat will bring about. And therefore, should Arizona really be intervening into the free market just because of the interest of its favorite players, the farmers?
Lab-grown meat isn't just a product. It's a revolution of how we think about our food, sustainable practices, and our environment. It is the answer for so many of our growing concerns about the environment and the ethical impacts of growing meat for our use. We believe that lab-grown meat is the future, and so we ask Arizona, are you going to choose to cling to the past, or are you going to embrace innovation and growth? We believe lab-grown meat is it, and we fully support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, University of Alberta. It's time for your one question.
lab-grown meat be developed and scaled up if the long-term consequences on public health and the environment remain uncertain?
As of today, the research shows that in consumer health and for the environment, lab-grown meat is actually beneficial compared to traditional meat. And we've seen it's the most ethical way forward because there's much less harm put out into the world. And therefore, lab-grown meat should be pursued as a large-scale operation because it's a viable option for the free market, and consumers should have the option if they choose to buy so.
All right, folks, two more teams left. Please join me in welcoming the provincial neighbors of our last group, the University of Calgary.
$2.8 billion. That is the amount of money that has been invested in the lab-grown meat market globally. $2.8 billion. But how can this sum positively impact the people of Arizona? Esteemed advisory panel, we are sustainable. My name is Ayushi and my colleague is Yelena. Today, we will be talking about how we can cultivate the future of Arizona with lab-grown meat. The key problem statement we want to address is, how can Sustainova's lab-grown meat contribute to the future of Arizona?
To answer this question, we'll walk you through first our ethical framework. We use the framework of moral pluralism, specifically a combination of utilitarianism and a pragmatic approach, to ultimately deduce that the best way to introduce lab-grown meats to Arizona is via the pet food market. The first phase of our recommendation will be a partnership with the University of Arizona for research and development. The medium term, we will establish a production facility here in Arizona, and in the long term, we will supply our lab-grown meat to B2C pet food companies such as Mars Pet Food. The ultimate impacts will be a 90% decrease in greenhouse gases, the creation of 90 new jobs per facility, and the initial market capture of 10% of the premium dog and cat pet food market. Our ask to you, esteemed advisors, is your support in securing an introduction to the Arizona Commerce Authority, as well as your support in receiving the Arizona Innovation Challenge grant.
When looking at this question, what truly is lab-grown meat? Well, essentially, lab-grown meat is cultivated meat grown in a bioreactor derived from stem cells. The reason it actually exists in the market today is primarily because there is a rising global demand for meat. Furthermore, there are other concerns associated with traditional farming of livestock, like environmental impacts, animal welfare concerns, and of course the health risk of pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella. At Sustainova, we want to be a highly ethical operation, and we look at the traditional lab-grown meat supply chain and identify 3 areas of ethical concern. The first one being the welfare of source animals and ensuring that the animals have a high quality of life and have enough land, food, and water. Number 2 being the painful biopsy process in lab-grown meat, where needles are used to procure stem cells. And number 3, the usage of a problematic serum called the fetal bovine serum, which requires the use of cardiac closure of unviable fetuses. We wanted to address all of them with the ethical framework that we have of moral pluralism. Moral pluralism for us is composed of 2 different ethical frameworks. Utilitarianism, where we maximize the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of living creatures, both animals and human beings, and the pragmatic approach, which focuses on delivering tangible and practical outcomes for the people of Arizona.
Now looking at our situational analysis, we'll specifically focus on the pet food market as it stands today. What drove us to consider innovation in this industry were 2 key reasons. First, the creation of 64 million tons of carbon from the pet food market as it stands today, as well as the risk of potential health concerns from bacterial infection, as the meat products often used in pet food are not of the highest quality. However, we have 2 use cases that prove our recommendation is not only possible, but profitable. For instance, Bond Pet Food, located in Colorado, recently disclosed $17.5 million in funding for their lab-grown pet food, and Biocraft, located in Vienna, Austria, has already been producing lab-grown mouse, rabbit, and chicken meat for pet food, all without the use of fetal bovine serum. Overall, these two use cases prove the feasibility of our recommendation. Now, looking at the environmental analysis, we wanted to take a balanced approach. As such, the main points that we saw for proponents of the use of lab-grown meat for environmental reasons cited the potential for a 96% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. Opponents, however, cite the fact that if non-renewable energy is used, the climate impact may in fact be greater. We completely acknowledge that there is a potential for this process to have a greater impact on the environment. However, this outcome is completely dependent on the process and the energy inputs that are used, both of which we've taken into consideration for our recommendation.
Now, looking at the legal analysis, it's important to understand the nuanced issue of lab-grown meat in the USA. There are two states, Alabama and Florida, who have outright banned the sale of lab-grown meat. Then you have Tennessee that refused to ban the sale of lab-grown meat because they did not want to impede on consumer choices. And here in Arizona, there have been two bills proposed in the House of Representatives and the Senate regarding lab-grown meat, both of which have failed in the Senate. We recognize this is because the senators understand that with lab-grown meat, they're opening the door to economic development and growth, and by banning it, they would be taking away this opportunity from Arizona as a whole. So we then stepped back and considered the most important variable in this equation, the stakeholders. We identified 4 key stakeholder groups that are important to lab-grown meat as a whole, and they are ranchers, constituents, activists, and the federal government. These key stakeholder groups have several considerations and concerns, that being economic concerns, social risks, health risks, ethical, environmental, and legal concerns regarding lab-grown meat as a whole. So we wanted to develop decision criteria based off of the interests of these stakeholders. The 4 key decision criteria we identified that helped us get to our recommendation of lab-grown meat as pet food applications are job creation, economic growth, regulatory feasibility, and the court of public opinion, seeing if the public will actually adopt the lab-grown meat solution we developed.
The 3 potential uses for lab-grown meat we identified and analyzed were pet food, space food, and the use of lab-grown meat in disaster responses. As you can see, while space food and disaster response do satisfy some, they both fail under regulatory feasibility. The reason being is that as it stands right now, it is very difficult to secure the proper approvals to have lab-grown meat be distributed specifically for human consumption. As such, we decided to pursue pet food. Now looking at the actual details of our recommendation, at a high level, the short term will focus on partnerships with the University of Arizona, the medium focusing on production, where we will establish a production facility and hire local talent, and the long term focusing on supply, where we will scale up our operations and secure supply contracts with major producers such as Mars Pet Food, who has recently opened up a new headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, and has also identified Tucson as on the list of top 25 places in North America for pet owners. Looking into the details of phase 1, the first part here is focusing on working with the Center for Biomaterials Innovation and Translation to again support that innovation right here in Arizona. In the medium, we will begin to work on our lab-grown meats without the use of fetal bovine serum, as well as vertically integrate. What this would look like is ensuring that we have control over the welfare of the donor animal, making sure that they receive anesthetic and proper sedation during the process of biopsy to maintain their high quality of life, as well as ensuring that none of our products are made with the use of fetal bovine serum. And then the final stages, we will finalize our minimum viable product to ensure that we are ready to go to market for commercial sale. The stakeholders that are impacted from this part of the recommendation are activists who again are concerned for the welfare and well-being of the animals that we are using for biopsies. And from the government perspective, they are concerned with making sure we are staying within all current and future regulations for the production of lab-grown meat products. From an ethical standpoint, we used utilitarianism to ensure that we were maintaining that animal welfare component throughout, as we've done, and the pragmatic approach by ensuring that we are collaborating on actionable solutions and ensuring consistent testing throughout, so our recommendation is feasible and practical every step of the way.
Now, in the medium term, the key word here is production. We want to establish the production facility right here in Arizona and contribute to the state's economic development. We're going to do this by partnering with the Arizona Commerce Authority, and for our esteemed advisory panel, we request your support in this partnership and helping us acquire the Arizona Innovation Challenge grant as well. Furthermore, we're going to actually establish the manufacturing facility, collect the site, and of course, phase 3 is going to be to recruit those local skilled workers and bring jobs back to the state of Arizona. In this medium term, 3 key stakeholder groups are impacted, and constituents are happy because we're giving jobs, and the government will be content because we're adhering to regulatory frameworks. In the long term, and then as for ethical analysis, we strictly abide by the ethical framework of moral pluralism because, once again, we're creating economic benefit for the state of Arizona and also applying the pragmatic approach and creating effective and tangible solutions for the state of Arizona. Looking at the long term, the main goal is to focus on supply. As mentioned, we will partner with organizations like Mars Pet Food, and essentially what we will do is be the B2B supplier of lab-grown meat-based pet food. And Mars Pet Food and other companies will be the B2C connection taking it to market. We will continue focusing on early adopters feedback and continuously improving our operations to be better, have more ethical, and more environmentally friendly as well. In the long run, as you can see, all 4 of our key stakeholder groups will be satisfied, particularly the ranchers, because once again, we are not entering the market for human meat consumption. We're focusing on the market for pet food. As you can see, we abide by the ethical framework of moral pluralism, because not only are we reducing animal suffering in the long run, we are also creating a tangible plan that's very actionable and will create positive results for the state of Arizona as a whole.
Now, just briefly, the main risk we foresee arising from our recommendation is pushback from the rancher population. Our mitigation here is to ensure clear lines of communication and to reassure them that we are using pet food to alleviate the strain from an already overburdened livestock and agricultural supply chain. In summary, we recommend that you introduce lab-grown meats to the state of Arizona via the pet food market, which will perfectly establish the state as the leader for lab-grown meat innovation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Calgary. It's time for your one question.
Should lab-grown meat be developed and scaled up if the long-term consequences on public health and the environment remain uncertain?
Thank you for this question. We believe that the impact on the environmental and stakeholders should be studied thoroughly before lab-grown meat is scaled up. And this is why in our recommendations, we emphasize stakeholder needs. We firmly believe that any scaling operations of lab-grown meat that take place need to be having to limit the negative impacts of lab-grown meat on actual populations. That's why it's a very key important priority for us as Sinarwa, and we firmly believe that we'll abide by this as we scale up our operations.
Okay, time for our final finalist team. Please join me in welcoming our team from the University of Vermont.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank everyone here for being here today. We are Burlington Bio. My name is Otto Berkmüller.
And I'm Alexander Rubin.
Is lab-grown meat ethical, and if so, should Arizona invest in the future of lab-grown meat? That is the question we are here today to answer. We are Burlington Bio, and our philosophy is that the future of food is not choosing between traditional and technology. It's about finding harmonization between the two to nourish humanity.
Now that you know who we are, what will we be discussing today? First, we seek to understand the current state of Arizona as a result of the impacts of the traditional meat industry. We also seek to outline some key stakeholders and how we will approach their legal, financial, and ethical concerns, all to help us answer the question, should Arizona invest in the future of lab-grown meat? To answer this, we will assess our ethics matrix to make sure we are acting in the best interest of all stakeholders, and we will also fill out the pillars of common good using our 4E blueprint, making sure we are environmentally sustainable, economically viable, socially equitable, and acting ethically for all. We hope this will bring you to the final decision that the state of Arizona should invest in the future of lab-grown meat.
Now, why do we care? So currently in the world, Approximately 35% of the population is expected to increase in the future, and that will require approximately 2% of the resources, which we simply don't have at the moment. 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions are emitted from livestock farming, and over 77% of the agricultural land used for livestock farming or for agriculture is specifically livestock farming, but it only makes up 18% of the total calories that the world consumes.
Now, to tie it back to Arizona, there's a few numbers we want to direct your attention to. First, between 2017 and 2022, almost 40,000 acres of harvested cropland were lost due to soil degradation, drought, and other impacts of climate change. Additionally, the average age of a farmer in Arizona is nearing retirement, meaning there's not a wide pool of next-generation farmers ready to continue this industry. This all supports the findings of a 2023 University of Arizona report that says that the future of the industry in Arizona is not sustainable due to the drying climate and traditional practices. Now, in order to make sure we are acting ethically, we have assessed 3 different frameworks using our ethics matrix. We assess them on 4 criteria, including stakeholder consideration, contributions to harmonization between tradition and technology, long-term viability, making sure that the way we act now will not negatively impact us in the future and will benefit us, and additionally, applicability to Arizona. With so many environmental factors and key stakeholders at play, we feel that the common good framework is the best route to follow. As utilitarianism and virtue ethics leave a little bit too much gray area where certain minority groups within our stakeholders may end up losing out. This also works perfectly with our guiding philosophy, that the future of food is not about choosing between tradition and technology, but harmonization between the two to nourish humanity. This brings us to the pillars of the common good, which we'll fill out using our 4E blueprint. And we see that by bridging the gap between past and future, through adaptation of tradition and responsible innovation of technology, we will find the common good for all of our stakeholders. Our stakeholders include end consumers looking for a safe and affordable product, traditional meat companies who do not want to lose out on business and want to have a positive conversion to this new industry. Additionally, governmental bodies. We want to follow and support all positive legislation for lab-grown meat, and additionally, hopefully get some funding from the governments. Also, indigenous communities. Governor Hobbs has made it clear that initiatives to support and hear indigenous voices are crucial to all policymaking here in Arizona. Also, cultivated meat companies looking to make a responsible future profit. And finally, Earth and the animal advocates. There is no future for any agriculture if we do not address the impacts of climate change now. This brings us to our recommendations. We suggest creating an inclusive regulatory environment encompassing lab-grown meat regarding further inspection regulation and certain restrictions on labeling so consumers know what they're buying. Additionally, providing research grants and tax breaks to incentivize this new industry and encourage conversion from traditional farmers to better practices. Also, utilizing the ample amount of solar power as renewable energy to support the future of this new industry. And finally, leveraging the expertise of the president of this university, Suresh Garamella, who, as you may know, is the former president of UVM, and at UVM, he was able to drive research and funding in order to get important projects off the ground. And we think that his expertise could also help revitalize the reputation of the university in Tucson.
Now for the financial considerations. So, for an industry outlook, looking forward, there's an expected compounding annual growth rate of 45.5% going forward for the year 2032. And in the year 2032, we expect to be at a value of around $81 billion, and we in Arizona want a chunk of that. And if you look here, you see a distribution of all 174 companies around the world relating to where they are geographically. And that's in terms of the outlook for the state of Arizona specifically. For every 500,000 metric tons, it requires about 5,000 laborers to do such a thing, which is equivalent proportionately to the current status quo of the traditional farming in the state of Arizona, meaning the transition will be smooth and possible. In terms of investments, Arizona has put a lot of investments into clean energy jobs and renewable energies themselves, and this creates a positive feedback loop, helping us get closer to hitting the 150,000 clean energy jobs by 2030, both supporting renewable energy in Arizona and the cultivated meat industry.
Now, in terms of making this an economically viable enterprise, we need to improve public perception. The Good Food Institute has reported that 45% of Americans are willing to try cultivated meat for many of these reasons. The main ones being curiosity, environmental concern, which we especially want to utilize for younger demographics who generationally have more interest in technological innovation and sustainability. In order to improve public perception, we need to improve the taste and texture of this meat and make it a viable substitute to traditional farming meat. Also utilize behavioral science to make sure people understand the moral and ethical impacts of their transition, and educate consumers on the science. Now, in order to help educate consumers, we want to look to figures such as Jose Andres, who is an early investor and adopter of cultivated meat, serving it in his DC restaurant. He invited vegetarian reviewers as well as reviewers from certain cultural or religious groups that have dietary restrictions regarding the processing and production of their meat, which will help those communities see that this is an alternate solution for them. Also, his celebrity status offers a chance to learn about this product from an individual who people may be able to connect with more than a company.
Now let's move on to some law considerations. So currently, the FDA and the USDA work together. The FDA sees and oversees the entire cultivated meat process up to the point of harvesting, and that is where they transfer it over to the USDA and specifically the FSIS. And then going down to the bottom, you see grants. This is the most important part in the current state in order to drive the industry moving forward. And a lot of the grants are used by the federal government, but specifically we need to look towards also private investors such as Tyson or the Bill Gates Foundation, which has had a significant impact in funding. In terms of opportunities, we want to collaborate with Suresh Garamilla in order to improve the amount of grants and funding we receive for research. We also think it's important to provide a structure to the system in Arizona by having proper label requirements and definitions so we are transparent to consumers who want to have our products. And we also want to have an oversight committee to help with the USDA and the FDA and take some weight off their shoulders. And in terms of the targets for Arizona, we want to achieve the Clean Air and Water Act specifically and the other ones as well. And how are we going to do this? Well, the nice thing about cultivated meat is it reduces significantly the amount of resources used in the process as compared to traditional meat markets, which will help us with all these impacts. And in terms of patents, look directly at the patent benefits. That's what we're looking for the short term. Patents allow these companies to have a competitive edge over competitors, and this is vital when it comes to getting investments from private investors.
Moving on to some ethical considerations, Native nations in Arizona, 50% of them have unresolved water rights issues. And 30% of the Navajo reservation, the largest one, has a lack of access to running water. Despite this, the total number of indigenous Arizona producers has risen over those 5-year span because of the generations of experience and knowledge in regenerative farming practices and earth-first practices. With 58% of Arizona farmers being of indigenous descent, we want to make sure we highlight them. This can be through incentivizing traditional regenerative growing practices and reduce water usage, working with the governor on tribal state partnerships to address water rights issues, and utilizing the Native Nations Institute to have educational outreach programs so all future farmers will be able to learn the right techniques for the future. We also have some impacts for traditional farmers. Again, you want to focus on partnerships and working to make sure they are included. This leads us back to the pillars of common good, and we want to make sure that we succeeded in filling this harmonization. With environmental transition to regenerative farming, as well as reduced environmental impacts, will lead to combating climate change and resource depletion. Economically, we need to see sustainable efforts in traditional agriculture through incentives, and additionally, having research grants and introduction to markets to create profit for lab-grown meat companies, which will help secure the future of the food systems for a growing population with 2 thriving industries. Next, for equity, proper integration of native voices and traditional farmers, along with appropriate regulation of labeling for end consumers and university research programs, will help make sure that all stakeholder concerns and voices are heard in a just and fair way, and they will all be represented. Additionally, improved practice and environmental considerations, combined with responsible innovation and focus on stakeholder needs, will help lead us to successful integration of cultural values and humane food production for the future. Thank you very much for your time. We are Burlington Bio, and we hope that you will be part of it.
Nice job, University of Vermont. Time for your one question.
Should lab-grown meat be developed and scaled up if the long-term consequences on public health and the environment remain uncertain?
So in order to address both the health concerns and the environmental concerns of the lab-grown meat industry, this is all key through economies of scale, which will allow production to move from a pharmaceutical standpoint to a food-grade standpoint. This will address food and the health concerns by not having to use the pharmaceutical-grade chemicals and instead using food-grade processes and other techniques. And additionally, in terms of will help lower the cost of energy, allow more access and use of renewable energy, because there won't be the high-intensity environment of the lab, and through specification into just lab-grown meat within labs, Then they will reduce energy costs and become more environmentally friendly moving forward. Thank you.
All right, folks. Wasn't that great? All 5 teams did an amazing job. Talking really fast like this. I mean, they took a 20-minute presentation and put it in 10 minutes, but they all did a great job of keeping it in the time. So we're almost ready to dismiss you to various locations, judges and students and everyone. But before we dismiss you out of here, Professor Melendez has just a few more words to say.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've reached that moment now, so before we sequester our judges back to room 120, I want to say thank you to the hundreds of students that are here from both my classes, Management 202 and B&A 302. How about a big round of applause for our students? Okay, so if we could have our judges follow Professor Fricke back to room 120 for all of our guests, our faculty advisors, our student participants, our student volunteers. Please make your way up into the atrium. I understand that the food has been served, so don't wait. Please start. And we will see you here very shortly. For any of the students that are here as part of my 2 classes, feel free to hang around for a while, introduce yourselves, and have some fun as well. Thank you, everyone.
What's that? Yeah. Go food. Sure. Either way.
Of course. Okay, I'm gonna go check the